drives the destruction of the Constitution, it has a much more sustained and systemic action. This is precisely what is happening with the child support system. The child support system, it was originally created for the purpose of forcing men to take responsibility for the children they had sired and then abandoned. This has been a matter of public policy for centuries. It goes back to the Elizabethan Poor Law. It goes back farther than that. Nobody disagrees with this. Nobody contests this, the appropriateness of this. What it's become is a way of forcing men, as Attorney Jed Abraham says it, to pay for the finance for the filching of his own children. And as recently as, well, the standard case law on this said that a duty of a father to support his children is based upon his right to their custody and control. A father has the right at common law to maintain his children in their own home, and he cannot be compelled against his will to do so elsewhere unless he has refused or failed to provide for them where he lives. In a few decades, that has been completely overturned. The child support system is a way of financing the divorce epidemic. It's a subsidy on divorce. When we subsidize anything, we get more of it. So what effectively we're doing is forcing people to pay for the stealing of their own children. This is amazing. It's again, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but the whole idea of no taxation without representation was based on the concept that the people's leverage, people's finances, people's money and property are their leverage against governmental tyranny. Right? In the English Revolution before, in the 17th century, the slogan was a little awkward, but it said it very clearly. It said, no supply before redress of grievances. Right? The Parliament said to the king, you take care of our problems, our domestic concerns, and we'll give you money to go off and fight wars. And it worked. I mean, that's how the power of the purse was the way that we leveraged, we wrenched the power from the executive from the monarchy to the legislature. This is exactly what the child support system undermines. A father's only leverage, his only way of keeping his children is his paycheck. It's one thing to take a man's children, it's another thing to force him to pay for it, because then there's no limit on the number of people you can take. And it's out of control, and this is precisely why we have this out of control epidemic. How much is this happening? We don't know. There are no figures kept on the number of fathers who are being incarcerated. We do know that the Bureau of Justice Statistics reports about 600,000 incarcerations in local jails. Some estimates report about 1/3 of the local jail population in this country is fathers on either child support or domestic violence or related charges. The Post and Courier of Charleston, South Carolina reports in 1990 on an average day 24 inmates were held for child support. 13 years later, last year, they reported that number had gone from 24 to 166, or 15% of the jail population. In Georgia, a sheriff and Superior Court judge had proposed creating labor camps, specifically for fathers, to relieve jail overcrowding. The Pittsburgh City Planning Commission considered a proposal by Goodwill Industries to convert a former chemical processing plant into a detention center for fathers. It was abandoned, apparently, after public outcry. I mentioned 100 inmates released in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and 37 released in Lawrence County, Pennsylvania, just in the last year. If you can imagine similar numbers in the 3,500 counties in America, there's no reason to assume that there's any less than that. I have a letter I recently obtained from the sheriff of Polk County, Florida in July of 2003. He's reported in the first 7 months of last year, 716 persons had been arrested on charges connected with child support. Again, multiply that times 3,500 counties and you get an astronomical figure. I'll just close with a quote by G.K. Chesterton. Chesterton argued that the most enduring check on government tyranny is the family. Without the family, we are helpless before the state, he said. The family is the only check on the state that is bound to renew itself as eternally as the state and more naturally than the state. Chesterton pointed out that there's a principle of the English Constitution that the king never dies. And he said it's a whole principle of the family that the citizen never dies. The family, he said, provides a heraldry and a heredity of freedom, a tradition of resistance to tyranny. Well, ideologically correctness aside, it takes little imagination, I think, to imagine that the family member that is most likely to defend the family against the state is the father. The anthropologists tell us that the father is also the weakest link in the family chain, the part that's most easily broken.